Representative Madison Cawthorn recently talked about how, or I should say was upset, that people in Washington keep asking him to sex parties. Take a look.
The sexual perversion that goes on in Washington, I mean, being kind of a young guy in Washington, with the average age is probably 60 or 70, and I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? Yeah. And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Yeah. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you. And it's like, wow, this is wild.
Yeah, no, you're right, Madison. This is wild. Except that everybody knows that this already happens. By the way, look, drugs and sex parties. Oh, okay, sex parties, kind of interesting. Oh, but with 60, 70-year-old men, not so interesting. Oh, that actually sounds pretty terrible. But the whole entire idea of like being surprised that there's this debauchery going on in Washington, D.C. among very rich, powerful men, is that at all a surprise? Oh, I could have never imagined. I can't believe there's gambling in this establishment. No, of course there is. Are you completely naive? No. And by the way, I'm going to get to a couple of things here. One is, who asked him? Well, I've got some ideas on that. But first, my first question is, if somebody's doing drugs right in front of you, Madison Cawthorn, and asking you to do sex parties, well, then why don't you report that? Why don't you go to the police, DC police? I'm sure they would be very interested to find out who's doing drugs right in front of you, Madison Cawthorn. Why didn't you? Oh, maybe it's because you didn't want to be a narc. Is that it? All right, sure. I get it. But look, this is an open secret. The fact that you have politicians that are doing drugs and having orgies, sex parties in Washington, not surprising at all. And so, yes, look, I think it happens more on the Republican side than anywhere else. But hey, look, you've had Democrats certainly getting in trouble for at least drugs. I'd like to see some names, or at least a name that would be interesting. But look, speaking of drugs, by the way, and speaking of, the authorities, do you think the authorities would even care? Not necessarily. I don't know, because here you have lots of politicians that have done drugs and got no jail time. For example, Barack Obama. Barack Obama, admitted, yeah, I smoke weed. And even there's some, I think, maybe rumors or allegations, or maybe an admission that he did a little bit of cocaine. Okay, sure. You also have, Bill Clinton. Oh, but Bill Clinton didn't inhale, by the way. He didn't inhale, so I guess it didn't count. You have George W. Bush, had a possible coke problem. So, look, you got people from both sides that do it, and it's unsurprisingly they don't go to prison because guess what? They're powerful. Just saying. Okay. So now, what do I think it is? Obviously, it's Matt Gaetz. Come on. No, it has to be Matt Gaetz. For one, Madison Cawthorn doesn't hang out with Democrats, so it's very unlikely that a Democrat's going to come and ask Madison Cawthorn, hey, we got some hookers and blow, at our house. You want to come by? You want to come hang out? No, that's not something that a Democrat was going to ask Madison Cawthorn. Okay, so let's be honest about that. But it does sound like something that Matt Gaetz might. Again, they're kind of in the same QAnon MAGA insurrectionist crowd, which is hilarious because Matt Gaetz is alleged to have sex trafficked a 17-year-old. So, but anyway, the reason that I say Matt Gaetz is because there's alleged witnesses of Matt Gaetz having, or at least being at these kinds of parties. According to two women in attendance to one of these wild Florida parties, at least, Gates was partying along with a lot of local Florida Republicans. Partygoers would share drugs like ecstasy and cocaine. Some had sex, the reporters said, the witnesses said, adding that after some of the parties, there was money, possibly Venmo'd, to some attendees. Gates once said, like to discuss politics, but then behaved like a frat type party boy, sometimes taking pills that she believed were recreational drugs. Some of those parties happened to have been low-key affairs, the other woman said. Some took place in hotel suites at the end of alcohol-fueled political functions. Quote, no one ever wants to stop partying, stop drinking, once you've had a few glasses of champagne in you. So look, very likely, Matt Gaetz. Again, under investigation for doing just this. And Joel Greenberg, another person that's connected with Gaetz. That case seems pretty damning. Now, why Madison Cawthorn is talking about this, but not naming names is kind of interesting, right? It could be that Cawthorn is distancing himself away from Matt Gaetz because maybe the evidence, the investigation for Matt Gaetz getting a little too hot for him to be at least associated. But I don't know. What I'm guessing is maybe we're going to find out sooner or later. And that will be very interesting.